spending more time, but I think that's an interesting fact that's brought out by your report, and I just didn't want to let it go. Mr. Israel.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Gentlemen, welcome. The Chairwoman opened up this hearing by noting that U.S. taxpayers are spending $12 billion a month in Iraq. And I noted Appendix 1 of Mr. Christoff's testimony states that total global donor pledges to the reconstruction of Iraq, total, everybody in the world, has committed $15.6 billion. We're spending $12 billion a month. The entire rest of the world has pledged $15.6 billion. Mr. Christoff, something's wrong with that balance as far as I'm concerned. Mr. Christoff notes in his testimony, the U.S. strategy assumed that the Iraqi government and international community funds would help finance Iraq's development needs. However, the Iraqi government has limited capacity to spend reconstruction funds. In addition, the international community has provided funds for Iraq's reconstruction, but most of the funding offered has been in the forms of loans that the Iraqis have not accessed. I want to delve into the issue of exactly what the rest of the world has done to assist the people of Iraq in their reconstruction. $15.6 billion in pledges. According to your chart, Mr. Christoff, the Saudis have pledged $500 million. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Have they actually provided $500 million in funding to the Iraqi people?
That is in the form of a loan that they're still negotiating.
In the form of a loan?
Right.
So it's not, we're spending $12 billion a month.
Right.
The Saudis, our good friends who are about to sell weaponry to, have cut a deal to loan the Iraqi people the money.
Yes.
As long as they get paid back.
In fact,
and is that with interest, Mr. Christoff?
I don't know, but it's 70% of the international donations are in the form of loans.
70%?
Correct.
Of the international donations are not donations. They are loans.
Excuse me, contributions.
Okay. If somebody were to say to me, I'll give you $5, but I want $6 back, I wouldn't call that a contribution or a donation. I could call that a loan. The Iranians, according to this chart, have pledged over $1 billion to the reconstruction of Iraq. Do you know what the status of that is?
I believe most of that has been provided.
They've actually, the Iranians have provided over $1 billion in assistance to Iraq in the form of loans, or do you know if
I
it's
believe
straight?
they were grants.
Straight grants. Thank you. So our friends, the Saudis, for example, are negotiating a loan, but our adversaries, Iran, have cut the check. The Turks, who spent an enormous amount of money lobbying the Congress of the United States not to declare the Armenian genocide a genocide, have pledged, is it $50 million? Do you know whether those funds?
I don't know the status of the Turkish contribution. Okay.
Would you please report to the committee as to whether our good friends, the Turks, who would not allow our troops to to have overflights when Iran began, and who threatened, in my view, unfriendly action that would further destabilize Iraq, what the status is of their $50 million?
We can provide for the record the status of all the contributors as well.
I would appreciate it. I think it would also be helpful if the taxpayer understood the difference between donor pledges and loans. So you said, I'm sorry, was it 80%?
70%.
70%
of the contributions, Madrid and post-Madrid, are in the form of loans.
Okay. I would ask, with the chairwoman's consent, if you could give the subcommittee a full breakdown,
yes,
country by country, whether it was a straight grant or a loan, whether that grant has been paid or is being negotiated, whether the loan has been paid or is being negotiated, and this may not be pertinent to you, we'll have to figure out who we need to talk to, but what do we need to do to compel the rest of the world to show some dedication to the reconstruction of Iraq, rather than asking the U.S. taxpayer to continue to foot the bill for what has become globally destabilizing. I don't know, and I would ask the SIGER whether he knows of any mechanisms that are available to us to compel our friends, our allies, and even those who aren't our friends and allies in the world to step up to the plate with respect to their donations, pledges, and loans. You have any comments, sir?
I think one way would be to urge the Iraqi government to call these loans due, if you will, these grants due, this debt forgiveness due, because it's now entered primarily a bilateral phase that is between donor nations and Iraq. The donor development assistance database is managed by the Iraqi Ministry of Planning now, and we have a chart on page 143 of our report that gives a layout of what we learned from that database about pledges and commitments country by country. But since it's now between Iraq and the potential donor country, and that's where the pressure should evolve from.
I want to make sure I understand you correctly. Do I have more time, or? Okay, I'm out of time. If the chairwoman could secure the information that I requested, that might make for a very interesting additional hearing or inquiry, and I would appreciate I appreciate the chairwoman's cooperation.
Just a note, it's difficult. It's difficult for the Iraqis to take advantage of the loans. They already have a heavy debt, even though much of which has been the Paris Club has allowed part of it to be forgiven, but nonetheless it's difficult. The Japanese have been negotiating for almost 2 years to try to just take a portion of the $3.5 billion in loans, about $150 million, to invest in the electricity sector, and they're still under negotiations. Possibly in March they might take advantage of at least $150 million out of that $3.5 billion.
Well, I would just conclude, again, a number that counts, $12 billion a month billed to the U.S. taxpayer, $15.6 billion, rest of the world, 70% of it is loans. Thank you, Madam Chair.
I thank the gentleman. Dr. Weldon.
Thank you, Madam Chairman.